guys, it is your boy Nick. You're back again with a brand new video today. If you guys saw my last video, you guys know that currently I'm sick right now, so these next few reviews are going to be mic and webcam because I don't have the energy to express myself in front of my normal camera. So even though this is going to be a lower quality review, we're still going to make do with it. I'm going to be continuing my series in which I review every single Marvel Cinematic Universe film up to the release of Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania. Today I'm going to be reviewing the second film in Phase 2, Thor the Dark World. So Thor the Dark World is directed by Alan Taylor and has a returning cast of Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, Natalie Portman, Kat Dennings, Anthony Hopkins, Idris Elba, and Stellan Skarsgård. They all do a great job just like they did in the first movie. Of all the things I feel went kind of downhill in Thor the Dark World, I thought the cast stayed great, so I'm glad that the cast is still great and all that in this movie. There's still some great chemistry between Thor and Jane, and we actually get more of that in this movie than we did in the first one, and the actors do a great job at doing that, so that's another plus for this movie. Renee Russo as Frigga, aka the mother of Thor and Loki, and she was there in the first one, but she wasn't there a whole lot, and so she had a lot more to do in this movie, and she was there for more scenes. I thought she did a great job in this movie. I think it's cool that she got to do more in this movie than she did in the first one. Jamie Alexander also had more to do as Sif this time. She does a great job in the movie. It's cool to see more Frigga and more Sif in Thor the Dark World. There's some interesting family conflicts in this one. There's some interesting family conflicts in the first Thor, but they kind of go a little bit deeper into the family conflicts of this one, especially with after what Loki did in the Avengers, so that's really cool to see in this movie. I'm glad that they kind of talk about that more within the family in this movie, considering that it's a very complex family with a lot of complex characters, so it's cool to see like more of it happen in this movie than we did in the first one. It's just a cool aftermath to see, in my opinion, from Thor and the Avengers. Another thing I want to talk about is that this is a great looking movie. It is shot in somewhat of a dark scale in a handful of scenes, but it does actually look very good. It kind of gives me like a Lord of the Rings, Hobbit kind of vibe. It does look really cool, and I think that for the vibe that Alan Taylor was going for, I think it really fits the idea of what he was going for. And I think that the cinematography and the shots and the coloring, all that, look very nice for this specific story. The action sequences are still pretty good to watch. I mean, this isn't my favorite Marvel movie. It's kind of it's honestly probably my least favorite MCU movie, but I do think that the action sequences are still very cool to watch. And it's, even though it's not a great executed movie, I thought that a lot of the moments in it were fun to watch, and also there's some more humorous banter between some of the characters, so that's always great, kind of like how there was in the first Thor movie. And so as I said, this is probably my least favorite MCU movie, unfortunately, but it's not a bad movie. It's just there's a whole lot about it that could have been better, and so I'm going to talk about the flaws right now. The flaws are kind of what hold this movie back from being one that I love, but it's still one that I enjoy, so take with that what you will. But to get into the flaws, Malekith was not a very interesting villain, and I think that a lot of people who have seen Thor the Dark World knows this. Thor the Dark World is like infamous for being the most forgettable MCU movie, and Malekith is infamous for being the least interesting character. I mean, Christopher Eccleston gives a pretty good performance, though. I mean, effects and the makeup and all that for the costumes and the species that Malekith is a part of was well done. I thought the performance was pretty good. It's just that the story wasn't interesting enough, and I don't think the writing should have just been better for the villain, because like idealistically he could have been a really cool villain, but there wasn't enough compelling writing for his character, so it fell kind of flat there, unfortunately. Another thing is I feel like this movie does feel a bit too serious in some points. You know, what I liked about the first Thor movie was that it was serious but funny at the same time. It took all the stuff about, you know, him being the God of Thunder seriously, but it had some funny moments in it to where it wasn't just so serious all the time. This one felt a little bit too serious, and because of that, it does kind of make the movie feel a bit dull at times, so that's kind of a huge step back for Thor the Dark World. I mean, you know, it's still an entertaining movie. It's just that there's some moments that are just not the most fun to sit through. I'm going to spoilers a little bit here, so if you haven't seen Thor the Dark World, you've been warned. Frigga's death is heartbreaking, and it should be memorable, but she didn't have much of an arc to begin with, so I feel like that's another issue kind of with Thor the Dark World. I feel like they should have maybe given her a little bit more time in this movie to be developed enough, and then we could have felt bad for her, because we didn't see a whole lot of her in the first Thor, and I feel like to just have her have a cool few moments in the second Thor and then just kill her off, and it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of emotional payoff to it, so I thought they could have maybe kept her there for a little bit longer, or maybe could have just waited to kill her off in a different movie. So I feel like that was kind of a missed opportunity there. One of my issues that I kind of had with the first Thor movie was Eric Selvig being somewhat of a vanilla character. And I have it written right here that he went from being a vanilla character to having an interesting moment in the Avengers. He's not in the Avengers a whole lot, but he has a few interesting moments that add a little bit more to his character in the Avengers. And then he just felt like the butt of the joke in this movie. I felt like a lot of the stuff they did with him was just for the sake of comedy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a very inconsistent arc, and that's why it's a very bizarre character arc for Eric Selvig. I mean, Stellan Skarsgård does a good job at playing the character. It's just that, it's a very weird arc, because he went from not that compelling, but not that interesting, but understandable reason why he's there in the first Thor to, okay, that's a cool few interesting things about him in the Avengers, to, oh, he's the butt of a joke in this one. So I kind of feel like they didn't really know what to do with the character, and so I kind of feel like, yeah, I kind of feel like his arc is just underwhelming and could have been a lot better. Unfortunately, I feel like we've seen better from Marvel. As I mentioned before, this is probably the most forgettable MCU movie, and Thor: The Dark World is infamous for being the most forgettable MCU movie. Not a bad movie. It's got some good moments. I mean, there's some people who hate it. I mean, you know, but it's got some good moments in it. It's a fine movie, but it is very forgettable. It's likable enough when you watch it, but like when you finish the movie, you don't really think about it much afterwards. The last thing I kind of have written is I can respect the idea behind making Thor feel more serious and epic in a Lord of the Rings kind of way, like I mentioned, but it feels tonally inconsistent with the character, because Thor is like, you know, he's the god of thunder and he's serious, but he's a funny character. He's a fun character to watch, and I kind of feel like with this movie being as serious as it was, it wasn't as fun as the first Thor, and it kind of makes you start to realize how much better the first Thor is in comparison. And it's not a bad movie, it's just disappointing in comparison to the first Thor, and I think it's also a step down from the Avengers. So, unfortunately, that's kind of how I feel about this movie. I don't hate this movie, I do have some fun with it, I do like it enough. It's an enjoyable enough movie, whenever I watch it I have fun with it, but it's got a lot of issues, and so I don't really think about it much afterwards. But with that being said, I do think it's a okay movie. I would recommend watching it if you're a fan of Thor. And even if you're a casual Marvel fan, this probably won't be your thing, but there's some fun moments in it. I'm going to give Thor: The Dark World an overall rating of a 7.8 out of 10. It's a bit frustrating. There's the same rating I gave to Iron Man 3. It's got some things that frustrate me. There's some things about it that are not fun to watch, but overall it's a fine movie. It's watchable. I have enough fun with it when I do watch it, and I'm going to give it an overall grade of a B-. This is so far the lowest grade I've given to a movie thus far in the MCU. And mind you, I think a B- is still not that bad of a grade. I mean, it shows that a movie is below average, like average. Yeah, it's kind of more of an average movie. If you give it a B-, it's okay, it's fine. It's just that it could have been way better. Is kind of how I feel when I give this movie a B-. I think a B- is a fair enough score. This movie, I don't think Thor: The Dark World is nearly as bad as some people make it out to be. It's just kind of forgettable. That's really the big issue with it. It's got some fun moments when you do watch it. I feel like you have a good enough time, but it's got a lot of things about it that are just not fun to watch. It's a bit too serious, and it's just kind of forgettable in the end. But it's an okay movie. I think that it's fine. I do recommend it enough if you're a Thor fan. That was my review for Thor: The Dark World. Make sure that you tune in just a few more days for my review of the next movie in the franchise, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I hope you guys enjoyed the video today. Make sure that you hit the like button, hit the subscribe, leave a comment down below, hit the notification bell so you get notified about my latest videos. And yeah, that's been it. Peace.